Do you have what it takes? You.
That's a hard-hitting question. That smacks you because I think the voice in my head asks me that question at least 12 times every day. Do I have what it takes? So thank you for externalizing that and really putting me on the spot. I hope I have what it takes.
It is a little bit of an uncomfortable question.
It is. It's a great. I'm really fired up for this episode though, because I want to use this as an opportunity to get into something that I think makes you super unique, but I think it's a great doorway to walk through with the parents, because this is going to be a phenomenal opportunity for our parents to look in the mirror and realize they do have what it takes. Because parenting is the hardest job and there's not a close second. And we talk about that all the time.
You keep saying that.
Nobody's provided any evidence that I'm wrong. Parenting is the hardest job.
Yeah, we challenge you to.
Yeah, you watch anybody that is a parent, you know this. It's the hardest job. There's not a close second. But I think they need to know right up front before we talk about anything else here. You do have what it takes to be a great parent. You do have what it takes to build the relationships you want with your athletes, your performers, and help them and coach them through the challenges that they'll go through in that.
I concur, Coach Crandall.
Well, thank you very much, Coach Galley. But I like this because I think one of my favorite things, back when we first met, one of the things that stood out to me the most about you was how mentally tough you were, because you put yourself in a situation to run a long way, swim a long way, and bike a long way. And I respected the heck out of that, because you proved to me just through those actions that you had what it takes to quote a movie that a lot of the kids like, to go the distance. And I think that I would love for you to share your story about doing an Ironman triathlon. And
first of all, I appreciate your admiration, because most people looked at me sideways.
Well, I looked at it you did what? I distinctly remember one workout where we had the team there, and you showed up and you were just joking around. You're like, "Hey, anybody want to run 20 miles with me tomorrow?" And I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, he's serious. He's running 20 miles tomorrow." And it blew my mind, because at that time I had never run longer than, I don't know, from here to the 7-Eleven to get my Coke Zero. But it blew my mind, and it blew the kids' mind. I'm like, dude, I respect that, because I knew you went out and did it.
I can't remember asking that question.
Oh, I remember you asking that question. It scarred me for life, but it stuck with me. And when I needed something to improve my mental toughness, that's what I went back to.
Cool. Well, let me paint a picture for you.
Please do.
Imagine a chilly November evening, Panama City, Florida, and you are greeted by hundreds of cheering strangers. These people don't even know you, and yet they show up at the finish line. It's other participants, other people that are cheering on other triathletes, locals. It's just quite an amazing scene, and it's dark. You start at sunrise, but I was finishing in the dark, and you have all these people at the finish line, and your cancer fighting and cancer beating wife is waiting for you.
Oof.
My friend Greg, he's a double digit Ironman finisher. He's done so many, and he was there to greet me. And as you come in, it's really a cool thing. They announce everybody. They announce you by name. And so there's a guy with the mic there, and he's almost as famous as Michael Buffer, doing the boxing matches. Let's get ready to rumble. And he's got a great voice, and you're coming in after, I can't remember if I was in the 14-hour range or low 15. I can't remember. The time has never mattered to me. But you hear this, Steve Galley, you are an Ironman. And the crowd goes wild. And then you follow that up with 10 to 20-second hugs with your wife and with your friend. There's tears flowing, your heart's still pounding. And then you sit down and put on one of those little emergency blankets and you eat a whole pizza.
Because you just burned off 3 whole pizzas in calories.
Yeah. And the medal is cool. Actually, the medal's so for me. Yeah. The finisher t-shirt is cool. I like t-shirts.
So if the medal's
Speaking of t-shirts, I busted out my 140.6 as my lucky number shirt.
I love it
for this episode. But the hat was cool. I finally had to throw the hat away. I mean, that thing was frayed and torn and tattered and
a little smelly.
Yeah, but those things are cool, but really it's the memories. Mm-hmm. And because it really becomes a team event for me, even though it's an individual event. Mm-hmm. And it's really challenging because when you're training for an Ironman, it's basically a part-time job. You spend 20 to 30 hours a week just training.
Man, that's insane.
And it makes you tired. And I was doing that when I was full-time teaching. It was really challenging.
And coaching too, right? Like full-time teaching and you were a head coach at the same time.
Yeah. And the reason why I'm saying that is you might be facing some individual challenge, some quest that you're on. You need to turn it into a team event.
That's super valuable there. I think that's actually a really good point to make because this will be end of January. We've passed National Quitters Day with New Year's resolutions and everything. And yep, I think some people feel that the challenges are too great on these. But if you didn't do this for the medal, the shirts, anything like that, why Ironman? Why would you do one?
Yeah, it is kind of crazy because my idea of fun and challenge as far as athletics and sports go is like a fast break in basketball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Finishing a fast break, shooting a shot, catching a pass and outrunning an opponent to the end zone in football. That's really fun. Mm-hmm. Even running shorter sprints in track. I really enjoyed that. But why would you go run for hours? Why would you swim for hours?
Well, I know I love it.
Why would you bike for hours? I mean, that's not me. I really don't enjoy that. I did it. Well, my friend Greg he's very responsible for getting me into it because when I started running and decided to do a marathon, I got injured. And my physical therapist just had me start doing triathlon training because all I could do was get in the pool or be on the bike because I had a torn calf muscle. And then I just so happened to get connected with my friend Greg, who was several years ahead of me and was into the Ironmans. I still had no desire to do it. But then as I started training more and hung around him, be careful who you hang around, people.
Choose well.
I really was intrigued by the idea of, can I make my body do this? I know I could play football. I know I could play basketball. I know I could do those things, but could I do triathlon? And once you started in triathlon, it's like, I'm looking at the biggie. I'm looking at the Ironman. I'm looking at the full distance triathlon and thinking, am I mentally tough enough to do this?
Do you have what it takes?
That was really the challenge. And I learned a lot from it.
Yeah. I would actually love to hear some of these lessons that you learned because I think there's some strong parallels between your Ironman experience and what our parents feel like they're going through because parenting a kid, especially through their teenage years, is basically an Ironman. Like it's that hard. It's the full distance.
Harder than an Ironman.
Absolutely. Hardest job, not a close second. What would you say is one big lesson that you learned there?
Well, I've got 5 of them. So are you ready?
Great.
So we'll start with 1.
Yeah, let's start with 1.
Number 1 is you need to talk to yourself instead of listening to yourself. And so when you think of Ironman, this isn't just November 6th in Panama City, Florida, one-day event. This takes months in advance. So there's so much training, much like parenting. It's like, It's always there, right?
Hmm.
You wake up tomorrow, you're on again as a parent. So it is really easy to get negative with yourself
Yeah.
because there are setbacks. It is hard. You don't wake up every day and you're just all smiles and lollipops and ready to go, do a 60-mile bike ride after work.
Yeah. And it's at that point that the voice inside your head starts telling you, skip
Yeah,
a day. You can't do this. This is too hard. It's not worth it. What are you
right.
doing? All
So
the,
from a practical standpoint, this is where just things that some people would dismiss as silly are really, really important, like having some simple mantras,
Mhm.
simple phrases, things that are motivating to you, inspiring, uplifting, and you need to think about, what can I really control? Well, I can't control that I'm tired right now and that I have to work and then I still have to go do this 8-mile run after. What can I control? Well, I can control my attitude. I
Yep.
can change how I think, how I can talk to myself, because people tend to, if you want to use a driving analogy, people tend to go into reverse.
Yeah.
You don't want to go screaming down the road in reverse at 40 miles per hour. I mean, it's going to be crash and burn.
Be a
You
fun
need to
YouTube video to watch.
you need to put the car in neutral and start talking to yourself instead of listening to yourself. And then when you're ready to shift back into drive, go
Yeah.
for it.
I think that's a great question for our parents to ask themselves just as they're going through this. Am I talking to myself or am I listening to myself? And you want to be in the driver's seat talking to yourself because that's where you can get stuff done. What's another one of the lessons you learned?
You ready for a rhyme?
I love
I love
rhymes.
these two words: synergize and harmonize.
It sounds like
And
a good band.
yeah, it could be. Earlier, I was talking about how you should make this a team effort.
Hmm.
It would be so lonely to just be a me triathlete, because, and I know I just had naturally a great team. My wife supported me 100% the whole way in this, and which is actually kind of nuts because it meant a lot more time away from her. And it meant that when I was at home, there were times where you are just, because I was doing this in my 40s.
Yeah.
This wasn't, I'm 22 and I can just, pop out of bed and, pump out 200 push-ups and sit-ups and then go run 6 miles. And yeah, this was taxing physically and mentally. And so I needed a team. There's also something really cool, and this because you're in the running community, the endurance running community, marathoners. There are so many cool stories within that community.
Yeah.
For example, in Florida, I walked with a person. He had a picture of his daughter on the back of his shirt and had the dates listed. She had passed away from cancer. And so I think I was just at a station where I ate 8 oatmeal cookies, which, like, you get really hungry during Ironman,
How
and
bad?
drank a half a gallon of warm chicken broth. And I just asked the person, hey, tell me about, I can't remember her name. Her name was on the shirt, but tell me about her. And we ended up just walking a little while. He told me the story, and it was energizing to me. So how would this relate to parents? Do you see any parallel there?
Well, the creating the team and the synergy, having your spouse to go through it with, great person to synergize with, reaching out to your parents. Your parents have been through that with you, and there's some connection that can come through that. If you don't have a spouse, this is where it's nice to have a community of people, good friends that are going through similar things. But you can construct a team. You can create those people. Like, you had a friend and you had your wife, but there were other people that you probably met along the way. Like, you finding this person while you're running the race and seeing what they went through and asking them about that. You can always create teammates. And many times it's putting these two things together. Don't listen to yourself, and yourself's going to say you're all alone in this. The reality is you're not alone. but you have to make the action or take the action of finding those teammates, recruiting those people to be a part of it.
Love it.
And
Number
parents, we
3.
thank you for recruiting us to be a part of your journey here. Thank you for joining us on this. Now, number 3, sorry.
No, number 3, take a friend. And what I really liked about this was I used this as a really powerful visualization and imagery tool. And I would take these people in spirit, though, and I'll mention a few of them. Their initials were on my shoes, on my hand, and in other places. And so I would just see the initials and not only think of them, but I would visualize them being with me and talking to them. Someone that you know very, very well, even if they're gone, you can hear their voice in your head. You know what their voice sounds like. And so, for example, I had TB, Tom Barrett, a brother-in-law of mine. He passed away when I was in my 20s and he was 29. Tough football player, leukemia got him. Okay. But he was with me on that race and I could hear his voice telling me. He was a big old lineman. I can hear him telling, like, challenging me, like even questioning me, like, hey, he would say, hey, do you have what it takes? Come on, man. Do you have what it takes? And that was motivating to me. GH, Glenn Hall, another brother-in-law. He died at age 50 of brain cancer. Devastating, awful. Hit him fast, and it had spread so far so soon that he really didn't have a chance. Anyway, he was hardworking, great father, husband. I think of him. It was an amazing memory. MR, Megan Reese. She's a beautiful young lady. She was born with cerebral palsy due to her umbilical cord being wrapped around her neck at birth. And my wife ended up helping her at school for several years, and she just became a real close family friend. She's in a wheelchair and has an amazing spirit, an amazing attitude. And in fact, we did a team marathon with her once, some friends and I. We each took like, I don't know, turns 5.5 miles at a time. I'm trying to remember, but we pushed her in her wheelchair and because she wanted to experience what it was like to go 26.2 miles. So we helped her with that. How could I not be motivated, inspired in my training during the race when I think about Megan? And then Rick Bojack, RB, always put his initials on. He's a friend and a colleague, one of the most positive people I've ever met. Passed away from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. In his remaining months and days when I'd go visit him, he was the one cheering me up. It was absolutely unreal, just an incredible person. And then my two biggest fans, RWG and LAG, my Robert and Linda, my parents. And I remember specifically during the marathon on the Ironman that there were some tough moments between mile 17 and mile 19. And I remember just really feeling like my father was with me and I could hear his voice. And that was synergizing to me. There's a harmony with these other people that's hard to explain, but everybody will have this with somebody in their life, whether it's a close family member, whether it's a close friend. Look for these people that can help you, that you can give energy to and you can receive energy from. This doesn't have to be a solo trip.
And I think for parents, the person that they do this for can actually be their kid. And I think the way to do that is just to purely love them as they are, not try to fix them, not try to, do anything or solve any problems, but just come purely from a place of love. And that's what I felt as you're talking about those people, is there's just the genuine love and respect that you had for them, and it motivated you on your journey. You can do this as a parent if you're coming from a place of just pure love for those kids that you have. And it's easy to do that. And because we love them, we sometimes want to fix them and make them different and do things like that, but we can't. And so just serving with love in our hearts and doing it for them, I think is a great way to do it.
Speaking of love, Nate, we would love it if any of our listeners who are on Apple, Spotify, any of the other platforms, if you would go to our YouTube channel, the Stop Parenting and Start Coaching podcast. We have a YouTube channel, and that's where we house our podcast. We'd love it if you would hit the subscribe button. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't subscribed, we would love it if you did that. You ready for number 4?
Yeah, I love number 4 too. Like number 4 helps me when I'm going long distance too, for sure.
I love number 4 because it's really a practical thing. And you know that I love the practical tips and applications for anything in personal development. Number 4 is shorten the course. So in Ironman, you're swimming 2.4 miles. You then bike 112. And then you get off the bike and loosen up your legs and go bust out a marathon, 26.2. Thus the number 140.6. That's the totality. If you are just stepping into the water, if you are just diving into the Gulf of Mexico and you're thinking about the finish line, your mind is in the wrong place. And when things get really tough on the swim, as they might, your mind can't be at the finish line. You've got to get yourself in the present moment. So shortening the course. So swimming to the next buoy, swimming the next 50 strokes, getting to mile 30, focusing on the next telephone pole when you're running. That's a common one for
sidewalk
runners. getting to the 13.1 mark, the halfway mark of the marathon. Chunk it up, break it down, cut it up into pieces. Just focus on winning all of these small battles. Just win this small battle. It actually makes the whole thing more fun. Instead of just thinking of this giant war that you're fighting and you get done and you win, why not have a whole bunch of wins along the way?
Stack the wins.
Much more enjoyable, much more fun.
I love how you bring that up, because I think what that allows us to do is we define our own success. We're able to jump in and say, hey, I'm going to that foam pole and I'm going to do it. And you can do it and you feel like a success and it makes you smile. And then it reinforces that and you can keep going because you defined what success looks like for you in that moment.
Sounds like the scoreboard course right there.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Might be worth checking out.
Yeah. So are you ready for the last one?
Yes,
Number
sir.
5. How appropriate that the last one is simply one word with an exclamation point. The word, Mr. Crandall, is finish. Finish. Simply do your best and simply do not quit. Now, I know there are people that get what's called a DNF, did not finish. And there are, in my opinion, there are many instances where a DNF there is no shame.
Is a worthy finish.
Yes, because you have injuries and physical conditions where it may not be wise to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to discount that. But I know for me, my attitude was to never have a DNF in any event. And so far that has held true. I am doing one triathlon a year, the rest, not an Ironman, but doing one triathlon a year till I die. And I still don't want any DNFs, but I remember a marathon that you and I were running together just a few years ago where it did not, NOT, did not go as planned.
For either of us.
Yeah. And it started with
it was my hip injury.
It started with an injury, and then we ended up being separated, and then I ended up just waiting for you to catch up. You were not even running close to full strength. But a really cool thing about that was we finished. And to me, that was one of the coolest marathons. It was not even close to, the time we wanted.
Yep.
It was not the plan we had that we were going to execute. It basically blew up within the first 7 miles or 6 miles. I'm trying to remember.
About mile 5 that my hip decided.
Yeah. If we were talking football or basketball, if we were talking football, it's like all of a sudden it was 28-3,
Mm-hmm.
in the first
End of the
quarter.
first quarter.
But there was something really cool. So anyway, finish. That's number 5, is even if you have to suffer, unless you're going to die, then we don't want that kind of a finish, right?
Right.
There's actually something cool about the suffering. And I know this sounds weird to people that maybe haven't experienced it, but it's after the fact that you really find enjoyment in this. And I have a client, his name's Marcus Frick, and he's a wonderful health coach. I've watched him grow his newsletter and his business. He has a newsletter titled 66.1, Nate. And the 66.1 is, that's the average lifespan of someone in America without having a serious disease. And he's trying to extend that. And he's worked at the Mayo Clinic anyway. Super sharp guy. I read this quote from him. He didn't mean to make this as a quote, but it was so cool to me. Definitely fits into Ironman. And that was, my strongest relationships are all with people I've suffered with. And then he went on to say, the shared suffering dramatically accelerates the growth of a friendship because it promotes trust. And I think that's true amongst parents, parent to teen, friend to friend, whether you're training for a marathon, an Ironman, or whether you are just trying to raise 4 teens or 2 teens or 1 teen. You suffering with somebody else, being in a community, is really, really critical. By the way, I'm going to put Marcus's info in the show notes.
Awesome.
And you could join him as one of his 42,000 plus subscribers to his totally 100% free newsletter. It's really good stuff about longevity and health.
Good stuff. Yeah, there's so much to take away there for parents about this idea of shared suffering. I think one good idea for parents of athletes and performers is, if they're going through a hard time, they're struggling with a team that's not doing well, or they don't like their role on the team, or any suffering that they have, sometimes you can't fix it, but you can suffer with them, and you can use that experience to draw closer with them. So if you recognize that your teen's suffering as they're going through something, don't feel like you have to make it better. Use it as an opportunity to suffer with them, love them, and be there with them in that suffering. And you'll find that what Marcus says is true. Those strongest relationships are the ones that are forged in the fires of suffering. So I think that's a good thing.
It definitely happened to me in Ironman with my training partners, with my wife during that particular year. She was diagnosed with cancer about halfway through my training for Ironman. We found out about that. And so suffering back and forth there, she was going through something much, much tougher than me going through Ironman training. And our shared suffering together was magnified.
Yep. And I think I just want to finish by telling the parents, thank you for choosing to come and join us, because parents, you might feel like you're suffering, but you're not alone. There's other people that are out there that are watching, that are listening. Steve and I have both been through that with our kids, and continue to go through that with our kids as they age and go through different challenges at different phases of their life. But we're all together. And I think that's part of the greatness of the community that we have here. Thank you for choosing to be a part of this community. And I hope you feel sustained and supported in what might be suffering for you. And just know that we believe in you, and you can do this. And if we can help in any way, feel free to reach out. So keep up the great work. And thanks for being with us today. On behalf of Steve Galley, I'm Nate Crandall, and we thank you, our loyal listeners, for tuning in to this episode. If you love what you're learning from the Stop Parenting and Start Coaching podcast, we would appreciate it very much if you would leave us a 5-star review and some glowing comments. We also encourage you to share this episode with your friends and family who are parents of athletes and performers. And if you want to explore further and see what Steve and I are creating to help thousands of parents, athletes, and performers, please visit our company's website at createtransformbecome.com. That's createtransformbecome, all one word, .com. There you'll find a growing number of resources to help you elevate your performance. Thank you again for your support, and we encourage you to create a magical relationship with your athlete and performer.